Doodle-dee-da-doodle-doodle. What's happening, everybody? Bobby Spellman here, and in this video we're going to talk about doodle tonguing on the trumpet. It's a technique that has been used by trombone players since time immemorial, but I think you can find that with a little practice it can be a real help, a real useful tool, even on trumpet. So stick around, check it out, we're going to have some fun. Trumpet with Bob. All right, doodle tonguing. What is it? Well, I'm sure you're already familiar with single tonguing, where you separate your airstream using the ta sound, and perhaps double tonguing, where you're also separating that airstream with the ka sound. Double tonguing, you can alternate between those two to try to create a particular sound. All right, well, doodle tonguing uses a different part of your tongue to also separate that airstream. So instead of ta or ka, now we're using da, 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 which you might use for legato single tonguing. Da, 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 and an additional tricky part of your tongue to separate that airstream, which is the l sound. All right, I'm going to be making some funny noises through this because there's no other way to do this, but as you get used to this, you'll be able to see the way that your tongue is used in a slightly different way in order to separate this airstream. So rather than ta, 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 there's a part of your tongue that you're using that's la, 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 la. All right, you can hear what I'm doing. I'm separating that air with the la, 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 la. In using that sound, you can alternate between da and la, da, la, 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 and you get what is, if you put it all together, daddle 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 daddle, or doodle 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 doodle, or deedle 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 deedle. All right, trombone players will often use this technique because as you're playing with a slide, it helps a lot to be able to articulate every note clearly with a sort of legato tongue. And if you're double tonguing or single tonguing, sometimes it can come off as sounding a little bit too aggressive. Whereas with doodle tonguing, you can create long flowing lines and give it a little extra articulation without over-articulating it or without being too heavy or cumbersome. Some trumpet players that were famous for using doodle tonguing to great effect are Clark Terry and Miles Davis, among many others. If you're really listening, you can pick up where they're using this tone. So, oftentimes, people will talk about doodle tonguing with the syllables doodle 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 doodle, or deedle 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 deedle, or daddle 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 daddle, doodle deedle daddle doodle doodle. Okay, however, as I was practicing this, I found just thinking about deedle doodle doodle deedle doodle, this kind of thing, was giving me a very difficult to distinguish or difficult to hear kind of quiet articulation. It might sound a little bit like this if you're not articulating clearly. Now you can kind of hear that something's happening, but I'm not getting a clear articulation out of the trumpet. The way that I learned to doodle tongue as I was practicing this was really to focus on stopping the air with the la of the doodle. La, la, la. So when I started practicing doodle tonguing to really get a better feel for it, what I started doing was, instead of saying doodle 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 doodle, I started with the lud, 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 lud. I almost started it backwards. I think if you start the doodle tongue technique backwards with the lud, 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 then when you add the duddle, 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 or doodle, 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 or deedle, deedle, deedle to the beginning of it, it gives you a much clearer articulation using the back of your tongue, the lud, 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 lud concept. So one way that you can practice doing this is, instead of starting off with doodle, 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 you can start with lud, 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 lud. It's almost like lud, 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 but instead of your tongue being in the tip front of your mouth, you're dealing with it way back here in the back of your head. Lud, 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 lud. Now you can hear the way that that's stopping my air as I go. It's creating a little bit of a barrier in my air as I go. Lud, 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 lud. That's going to be able to separate that airstream. If I play it on a trumpet, it's going to sound like this. At first you get a very abrasive sound, but you can hear the way that the back of your tongue is separating that airstream, just as if you were going ka 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 or ta 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 or any of the other ones. So, as you continue to practice that technique, stopping that air, you can start to play one long tone and really try to separate it. As you go, you can make it a little bit faster and really try to get it going. All right, so the da sound is easy. We use that all the time. Da 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 da. You're probably already familiar with that as a principle if you're using legato single tonguing. Da 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 da. But that lud 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 part is a little bit tricky. That takes some practice. But as you go, you'll be able to work on really articulating that end of the doodle tongue to try to really pop those notes out there. All right, I'm going to give it a try here. We're going to try it on one note, just one continuous note. So I'll begin with that very clear, try to push it as hard as I can, but as your tongue gets used to doing these little acrobatics, flipping over that airstream, you're going to get better and better at being able to create a continuous doodle tongue sound. Doodle, 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 doodle. And just like with all other tonguing techniques, what your goal is to be able to try to create a consistent rhythmic sound. You want it to try to be as consistent as possible. Doodle, 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 doodle. In the beginning of the example that I just played, it was a little shaky in the beginning and then it became more consistent. So as you practice, you want to try to aim for maximum consistency. As you go, you can start to incorporate the doodle tonguing technique to your scales. And one thing I like to do a lot is the classic Clark exercise. So I can apply the doodle tonguing technique to the Clarks to try to get a very precise sound out of each of those notes as I go and to get used to that as a technique for tonguing. All right, with doodle tonguing, you're going to notice that you're not going to get the same crisp, clean articulation that you would get from single tonguing, double tonguing, or even jazz tonguing, but it is a great tool for playing more long legato lines or faster lines where you want to separate the notes a little bit, but you don't need it to be over-articulated. So I'm going to give a couple of examples. I'm going to play you some ways that I would incorporate doodle tonguing into my own playing and contrast them with a more conventional jazz tonguing approach. Here's jazz tongued. Here's doodle tongued. Jazz tongued. Doodle tongued. Articulation is a very personal characteristic in jazz trumpet, and the way that a musician chooses to articulate his or her notes has a big impact on the particular character or sound of that person. Compare, for example, Dizzy Gillespie and Kenny Dorham with, let's say, Clifford Brown or Freddie Hubbard. You can hear instantly the personal approach that each of these individual musicians chooses to use in order to create various articulations. I personally find that if I'm playing more angular lines, that it's better to stick to jazz tonguing, single tonguing, and double tonguing. However, with more flowing lines, connected lines, maybe some more chromatic things, and more lyrical kinds of phrases, I find that the doodle tonguing is a big help. So I like to go back and forth and incorporate all these different kinds of approaches to articulation in my playing, depending on the circumstance. Many trumpet players avoid it altogether, but you may find that doodle tonguing becomes a very useful part of your trumpet articulation arsenal. It's always worth giving it a shot, trying it out, see how you can incorporate it into your lines, into your improvisations, and into the way that you play even written music. All right, gang, hope that helps in your quest for doodle tonguing excellence. If you got any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. All right, thanks, gang. See ya. All right, folks, thanks so much for checking out this video. If you found it useful or informative or just entertaining, be sure to give us a like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment if you got any questions or if this video helped you out, or be sure to send it along to any of your trumpet playing friends. We're currently offering lessons online, and you can visit our website at www.ridgewoodschoolofmusic.com. We're also offering lessons in person in the Brooklyn, Queens, and greater New York City area. Be sure to send us a message and we'll get back to you just as soon as we can. You can also follow me, Bobby Spellman, on Instagram at @BobSpellman, on Facebook at Bobby Spellman Music, or on Twitter at Bobby Spellman for some more trumpet fun. Lastly, if you found this video useful and you'd like to give a little donation to the cause, you can find us on Venmo at Ridgewood Music. All tips will go to the creation of more videos like this one, and we really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, gang. We'll see you on the next one, and happy practicing.